I'm Kristen Berman. Welcome to our discussion on how you can influence your own genetics and physiology to help you on the road to aging young. I must tell you, when I first began looking at this important yet potentially very confusing subject matter, I was a bit worried about how I was going to share this in a way that made sense. And then I came across Drs. Michael Roizen and Mehmet Oz's brilliant way of explaining these ideas with the clever use of metaphors of a modern city and later a shoelace. And it's clear to me how these two well-known doctors have been so successful in educating the masses through their many personal achievements in health and wellness. So, rather than reinvent the wheel, I'm going to borrow a couple of their models of explanations as we go. So I'd like you to now think of your body as a major-sized city. So as cities go, which are you going to be? The one that is vibrant and thriving and ages gracefully, or the one that is worn down and rusted out? Because despite genetic differences, which are like the geography upon which the city is built, cities age differently because of the way residents treat their education system, our DNA, their power plants, our mitochondria, their electrical grids, our brains, and their transportation routes, our blood vessels. The bottom line, as the mayor, resident, and street cleaner, you have the power to balance your biological budget to ensure a life that is both long and strong, because thankfully, just as cities can invest in renewal and improving their repair processes, so can you. In truth, most people mistakenly believe our genetics predetermine how healthy we will be as we grow older. But the truth of it is, when it comes down to it, your longevity is based only 1/4 on your genetics, but 3/4 on your behaviors and lifestyle choices. So, how do we take control? Going back to our city model, try to think of your genes as the physical location of your city, something you can't change. For example, if you're in Chicago, it's windy. San Francisco, it's built on fault lines. New Orleans has hurricanes. Buffalo has lots of snow. Just like your city's location, your genetic traits can make you more or less predisposed to health-related windstorms, earthquakes, hurricanes, and snowstorms. But that doesn't have to mean you can't protect yourself if you're unhappy with the genetic hand you've been dealt. So, let's take a look at ways you can adapt and adjust to deal with whatever nature throws your way. If controlling your genetics can help you avoid the major age-related diseases, how do you go about changing the function of your genes? One way is by rebuilding your chromosomes, the units inside your cells that store your DNA information on long strands. It helps to picture this. On the end of each chromosome lies a plug of small substances called telomeres, and you can think of them as being like little plastic tips on the end of a shoelace. Now, every time a cell reproduces, that telomere gets a little shorter, just as the shoelace tip wears off with time. Once the protective tip is gone, your DNA, much like a shoelace, begins to fray and unravel. And that's what causes cells to stop dividing and growing and thus replenishing the body. Because the cell realizes it's no longer helping the body, and it then commits suicide, which can contribute to age-related conditions. However, some cells in the body have a protein called telomerase that automatically rebuilds the ends of the chromosomes to keep the cell and you healthy. So how does all this relate to controlling your genetics? Well, first off, when it comes to telomerase, the repairing protein, like many things, the amount you have working for you is highly dependent on your genetics. Additionally, certain conditions, primarily stress, can have a huge influence on how cells divide or fail to, because chronic stress also shortens your telomeres. How significant can stress be in this picture, you may be wondering? Very, since the telomeres of people who feel more stressed are almost 50% shorter than people who say they're less stressed, which scientists estimate could biologically age them a whopping 9 to 17 years. Therefore, clearly, since stress is frequently unavoidable, your best offense is to teach yourself how to manage stress through various techniques that help you both manage stress and control your emotions, and therefore decrease the odds of having your cells die and contribute to age-related problems. Let's take a quick look at some proven techniques. One of the most effective techniques is deep breathing and meditation. These techniques work best when used together, and in addition to helping you manage stress, can even help modify the messages sent from the body to the brain and thus improve both your memory and your immune system. I recommend you set aside time each day to breathe deeply from the base of your lungs and meditate. Before bed is always a good time, as well as any time you're trying to manage stress. If you're wondering how to meditate, all it really means is for you to clear your mind of all thoughts, even for 5 minutes. To help you clear your mind, pick a simple word, and it can be any word, and repeat it over and over to yourself. Another important component to managing stress also happens to factor into our tools for managing genetics and physiology, and that is the importance of adequate quality sleep. In fact, a good night's sleep is critical to both your health and longevity, as evidenced by the fact that humans die faster without sleep than even without food. Some things to keep in mind to help you get your critical Z's is best to sleep in a cool, dark room. You may use white noise or background noise, such as a fan, especially if you're in a noisy environment. Also, try to establish a standard wake-up time to help set your circadian rhythm. And it's typically best to sleep in loose, lightweight clothing and just use more covers if you need it. Be sure your mattress is comfortable for you. And lastly, go ahead and play a relaxation or even a self-hypnosis CD before going to bed. You could even gain the benefit of stopping smoking or losing weight or creating success in your life, since all hypnosis programs begin by taking you through a series of relaxation exercises first. These can be very effective, especially for those who have trouble falling asleep because they just have too much on their mind. On the other hand, try not to watch TV or watch the computer soon before bed. Do not have alcohol or nicotine 1.5 hours before bed. Don't have any caffeine for at least 3 hours before bed. Try not to eat within 3 hours before going to bed, especially if you're prone to acid reflux. And don't do heavy exercise up to 1.5 hours before bed. Next, although this isn't the first time it's come up certainly, exercise is simply one of the life's greatest stress relievers. Walking, yoga, gardening, just do something you enjoy and move. Additionally, this also ties into manipulating your genetics, because realize just 10 minutes of walking turns on a gene that decreases the rate of cancer growth. Of course, another aspect of controlling your emotions and thus your genetic expression lies in controlling your anger. In fact, anger has been shown to lead to a higher incidence of heart disease and other health problems, and we know it leads to the release of stress hormones into the blood. So every time you feel the hot rush of anger flooding in, as over 16 million Americans with anger problems do, think, my telomeres are shortening. And try to get a grip with one of these practical tools to diffuse it instead. But first, let me just tell you, you may be surprised to hear that part of the problem can be that many of us have been misinformed about the best way to handle anger. By simply releasing it, by like hitting a pillow or a punching bag, etc. But apparently, this just teaches you to develop a behavior pattern. Get mad, hit, punch. But this still harbors stress and the health consequences that go along. Instead, experts say it's best to use behavior and mental techniques that have been shown to reduce anger and anxiety. For example, try doing the opposite. Whereas letting it rip actually escalates anger and aggression, not to mention doing nothing to resolve the problem. To cope with an emotion, you have to do the opposite. So in this case, the opposite of anger is to develop empathy. So, for example, instead of swearing at the guy who just cut you off in traffic, think that maybe there's a reason he did so. Like, maybe he just got a call from school and his kid had an accident on the playground and he was distracted and rushing to get there. You get the idea. It can also help to keep a record of thoughts that make you angry, since it may help you to understand your triggers. Do you get angry at a lack of respect, or wasted time, or insults? Of course, you do have to acknowledge that you are experiencing a physical response to your anger. So telling yourself or being told to calm down isn't going to work. So in order to dissipate the anger, try doing something physical that's nonviolent. Taking some deep breaths is always helpful, but also you could try stretching, taking a walk, or even doing some push-ups. Another way you can affect your genetics and physiology is to adopt a positive attitude. Thank you. I'm Kristen, your anti-aging specialist here at ProfessorIt.com.